Today, I'd like to talk about the Buddha's very first teaching or sermon called the Four Noble Truths. So the Four Noble Truths is basically Buddhism in a nutshell. It's going to give you this high-level overview of why we're practicing Buddhism and actually how to practice Buddhism as well. Now, the one caveat I give is there's a lot of deep meaning to the Four Noble Truths. So just like reading these Four Noble Truths, you're going to go, okay, I got that, I can do this, but there's a lot more to it besides this like intellectual, level we might put to the Four Noble Truths. It's a true practice of it and a true, clear, deep understanding of like what they actually mean. So all the Buddhist traditions, all Buddhist schools, they all have the Four Noble Truths inside them. It's not, specific to one school or tradition. They all accept it. And all the Buddhist traditions have different ways of practicing it. Now, we're not going to get into all that in this video, but basically just be aware that, yes, this is common to all the schools of Buddhism, which is great. Now, a way I'd like you to kind of think about these Four Noble Truths as I talk about it, imagine the Buddha is a doctor or physician, and we are a sick or ill patient. And before you get worried, not like, sick or ill in a medical sense, but in the Buddhist terminology sense. And I'll talk more about that in a second. So let's go into the first noble truth. So the first noble truth is basically Dr. Buddha diagnosing us. He's looking at our symptoms. He's going to diagnose us and tell us like what's wrong. Because, we came to the Buddha for a reason. Something's just not quite right in my life. I'm just not exactly sure what it is. Just something feels off, right? Help me out here, right? And I'm sure we've gone to doctors for very, similar things like, something's just not right. And they do lab tests and they figure out kind of like, what's wrong with you, doing a diagnosis. So basically the Buddha is saying, well, what you have is something called dukkha. But don't worry, it's not terminal. It's not a terminal illness. And so what dukkha basically is basically our, you've probably heard this term, suffering, life is suffering. It kind of came from dukkha. It's basically a sloppy or a Western, kind of like, name for dukkha, but it means everything from like unsatisfactoriness, disease, stress, etc. So there's no perfect, English or Western, explanation what dukkha is. It just means a variety of different things, but basically unsatisfactoriness is probably a good one. And here's another way to kind of think about this. I'm going to use this analogy as well. Imagine, you're on a road, right? You're driving on a road, and let's call it, there's something called samsara in Buddhism. I'm going to talk about in a second. We'll call it Samsara Boulevard or Samsara Road, and it's full of like potholes or bumps, right? And that could be a very unpleasant experience. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's no potholes or bumps, and you're like, well, this is okay. But other times it's not. That's basically our existence, right? And that's what was making us feel, something's not quite right when we went to the Buddha. Like, sometimes I got these bumps, it hurts, kind of like when I'm driving down and bouncing all around in the car, right? So the wheels on your car are very important. It's going to get to the last part of the Four Noble Truths. When we get to that, it'll make better sense. But your wheels are actually not perfect. And that's why those bumps and those potholes in the road are affecting you so much, this unsatisfactoriness. So the Buddha is saying, yeah, there's dukkha in your life, but it's because dukkha is a result of this belief in a rising and falling of things, right? So we have something called dependent origination in Buddhism. So there is the arising or birth, existence, and the ceasing, the death of things, right? That includes ourselves, and includes our thoughts, our feelings, moments, experiences, tastes, sights, you name it, right? They arise and fall. In Buddhism, there are what we call conditioned phenomena or dharmas, and they are all what we call impermanent. They have impermanent and they have no independent self. So let's jump right into the second noble truth. So basically the Buddha said, your disease is dukkha. And he's going to explain like what dukkha is, like, like why you have this disease. And so I mentioned, in the first noble truth that this is due to like the arising and falling of things, the temporary nature or the fleeting nature of things, right? So that's really important because, us as also, temporary fleeting things, although we seem to last like a long time, right? We're temporary, we're fleeting. And so we are kind of like, we bury it deep down, especially in the West, culturally, we don't want to believe, in, we're going to die or, that something's going to not last, So we kind of like push that down. So we kind of falsely believe in permanence. It's this delusion. And we also believe we have a independent self. So this causes us lots of problems, dukkha. And I talked about Samsara Boulevard, Samsara Road. It's basically this cycle of rebirth, what we call in Buddhism, the cycle of birth and death. So basically, and this will make better sense. So basically, like, wow, I really enjoyed that chocolate cake I just ate. It had great feelings for me, right? It's very impermanent. I ate it, right? And also the taste, the feeling I got from it was very impermanent. It faded away too. I'm like, well, I want that experience again. Maybe I'll have another cake again. Also fleeting. It also goes away. Also, like, your thoughts, your ideas, relationships, loved ones. So it's, separation from what you love, So we're constantly, craving, thirsting for things to satisfy us, the sensual satisfaction to satisfy these feelings inside us so we can feel, quote unquote, happy, feel good, feel loved, whatever the terms you want to use. And so we crave these things, and then we cling to it. Like, well, I don't want to let go. I don't want to let go of this person, this feeling, this thought, this taste, this sight, whatever, right? And the problem with that is it's temporary, it's impermanent, it's a fleeting thing. Things arise and things fall. And so when they cease, when they no longer exist, we suffer. We have dukkha. And what do? We go right back to, I'm craving, I'm thirsting for something to replace that, to get that feeling. I cling to it, on and on and on and on. The cycle of birth, rise and fall, and rise and fall, and rise and fall. And it's basically, you're on Samsara Drive, Samsara Boulevard, and you're like, these bumps are horrible. Oh, now it feels good. Oh, these bumps are horrible. Oh, it feels good. We're constantly doing it, and we become so used to it. We go, oh, I guess this is okay. We're okay with this suffering, this dukkha, when we don't need to be. And so a good, another good analogy is basically all things are on fire. There's actually a fire sermon of the Buddha as well too, where basically all things are on fire. And go ahead, think about it, like, what if you're like in a house that's on fire, right? And sometimes you have smoke inhalation and it's not comfortable. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get burned, singed, by the fire. Sometimes you don't. And is that the right way to live? No, that's your natural state, is not to be in a burning house, right? That's not comfortable. That's not the way it should be. You should be in a house that is not burning. But we are in this burning house. This is samsara due to our actions. Those fires in the house caused by us due to clinging, to the craving, etc., right? So we have something called the three poisons or three fires. In Buddhism, I call them the three fires. So basically, there is delusion, so our delusionary nature about the truth of impermanence and also non-self. And then we have greed and anger. So basically, these fires are caused by this, right? We're constantly feeding it because we want to be attached to stuff that fulfill our sensual pleasures and make us feel good. But they're temporary in nature, so they're not making us feel good in a true natural way. They're not true happiness. So the third noble truth is basically the Buddha giving the prognosis. So all doctors give you prognosis, like you're going to die or you're going to live, or here's what it's going to be, right? So his prognosis is you're going to live. All you have to do is take the prescription. That's it. So like you can absolutely cure yourself of dukkha. You can do it. So basically that's what the Buddha taught, was all about dukkha. That is his central teaching. Sounds very simplistic, and it really is, but he taught about dukkha and how to end dukkha. And that's what these Four Noble Truths are about. So he's saying, yes, you can end dukkha. Now I can show you how. And so, okay, what is this cure? And he's like, well, it's actually your natural state without, this illness, right? It's called nirvana. So nirvana is not like a heaven or a place you go to. It's your natural state. Is who you actually are. And it's free of, dukkha. There's no dukkha there, because when you're realizing nirvana, you're able to fully understand the concept of impermanence and also non-self. And when you understand that, delusion falls away. And when delusion falls away, you're no longer affected, by, thirsting for, craving, sensual pleasures to fulfill some temporary, impermanent, sensation inside you. So you understand that, the concept of non-self as well too. So, this dukkha is not arising anymore because you're not affected by the things that were causing it in the first place. So nirvana, is called many different things or explained different ways. You've heard probably, a peace. It's a peaceful state. It's it's true peace. It is also, you probably heard like blowing out or extinguishing. What they're talking about is like blowing out or extinguishing, these fires, like the three fires of greed, anger, and delusion. You're blowing them out. So remember that burning house? You're blowing out the fires. You can go in and enjoy, living inside your house now, living inside your world. How do we get there? The Fourth Noble Truth is actually the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path. And we'll cover that in a different video. But basically, this is the Buddha's path showing you how to drive down Samsara Drive, Samsara Boulevard, right? And so what's really interesting about the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path, he's given you basically this prescription that anyone can follow and anyone can cure themselves. Anyone, according to the Buddha. And so it's made up of three parts. There's wisdom, there's morality or conduct, and then there's also like meditative concentration. And so the first part is that wisdom category. So there's right thought and right understanding. This is basically giving us the foundation, if you will, to understand what's actually going on, understanding dukkha, understanding impermanence, understanding non-self, etc. Right? When we start understanding that, at a true, deep, clear level, we're removing the delusion that's actually causing our wrong actions and beliefs, right? So then it goes into, the concentration of the mind. So we have mindfulness, we got meditative concentration or samadhi, and then we also have right effort. So you have to have effort on this, right? You can't, if you're not going to, work to cure yourself, then you're not going to get cured. So effort is a very important component of this as well. And then we also have, right ethical conduct, if you will, the ethical conduct or morality section. And so this is right speech, right actions, and also right livelihood. So you can go ahead and, follow all these other parts of the Eightfold Path, but if you're not following, your conduct, then you're just defeating the purpose. You're basically, putting fuel on those flames again, allowing the house to burn again, like allowing yourself to burn again. Like, why would you do that? So the actual ethical conduct is a critical component of Buddhism and the Buddhist path. So I gave you an example a couple of times, of, Samsara Boulevard or Samsara Road, right? And driving down it. If you're not aware, like when you get, tires on your car, it's not actually, it looks round, but it's actually not perfectly round. And if you ever watch them, they're actually, putting weights inside your tire. They're balancing it, or on the rim, I should say. So basically they're balancing your tire so it is smooth. So like when you're driving, you're not, bouncing all around over the place or having an uncomfortable ride, right? So dukkha actually means not perfectly round. And so that's really interesting, because you think about that. If you're driving, down the road with a not perfectly round tire, it is not going to be comfortable. Now, the opposite of dukkha is sukha, and that is what the Noble Eightfold Path is doing, is making your wheel perfectly round. Because when you practice all these 8 steps, it smooths it out. So like, for example, maybe you're great on right speech, but maybe not on right actions, or your meditative concentration is fantastic, but not your right livelihood. And so you might be better in one part of the Eightfold Path than the other one. So maybe smoother here, but more bumpier here. You're smoothing it out. And so like when you have it all perfectly round, you're going down that road, those bumps, those potholes, they're no longer affecting you. It's almost like you're floating on air, because you're driving, you're walking, you're existing in your natural state, which is nirvana. Those potholes and bumps, they're extinguished. Because remember, dukkha is created by us, because those potholes and the bumps right there, it's basically, impermanence and non-self. Like we're believing in those things, so thus we're, craving and clinging, and, we're just in this endless, self-abuse cycle, if you will. So we've made Samsara Boulevard, well, we've made it into Nirvana Drive or Nirvana Boulevard. We are actually now driving down the correct path. Our wheel is perfectly round. This is a good existence. This is true peace, true happiness, because now you can exist. And don't think like, well, this is like blowing out like what I truly love, or, I can't, feel any joy or excitement or anything else like that. What you're experiencing with nirvana is your actual true nature, true self. And it scares some people sometimes, because they're like, well, I enjoy, like the movies, or I enjoy eating this, or I enjoy these sensual pleasures, right? But we actually don't. It's really interesting. It's almost like we're a habitual criminal and we just can't get out of, prison. Like we go to prison, like, well, I'm not sure exactly what to do here. It's beautiful outside, it's comfortable. Like, well, I'm used to my routine. I'm used to being abused. I'm used to how the prison life is. That's samsara, that's dukkha inside there, right? The samsara prison. And so it's that delusion that we have to kind of break down, and it takes a long time because of our fears about it. But we're actually able to exist, and a lot of times the things we believe, as far as concepts as love or happiness or whatever you want to call it, there sometimes are preconceptions or our beliefs about it. They're actually not true happiness, true peace, and it sounds kind of weird, but like we put a lot of labels and weights on, our beliefs about stuff. But the Buddhist concept is you're getting back to your natural true self. And don't think like, well, I can't engage with my family or anything else like that. And I'll just give you a short example. Like when the Buddha's father passed away, the Buddha went there and he was there, carrying his deceased father, a part of the funeral procession. But what was different was, the Buddha, as an awakened, fully awakened, enlightened being, he was not affected in a negative way by that. For us, we would, because, wow, permanence is hitting us right in the face with, a loved one who died, right? But the Buddha understands impermanence, he understands non-self. So he's able to interact and, just, be there in the present moment, which is what nirvana is. We're living in the present moment, not in the future, not in the past. We're living where we should be in the present moment. And that is true peace and true happiness. So I would like to hear more about what you think about the Four Noble Truths, and also maybe what tradition you're in and what your practice is as well. So I'd love to hear down in the comments. Thank you.